with social emotional learning and math achievement. I love this quote by Plato. Education is teaching our children to desire the right things. So when I look at the background of looking at social emotional learning and math, I notice in history, when we lean in to a lot of the academics that we're looking at, for some reason we lean out from emotional learning, and this affects character education for students. And we really notice this today and day to day. The other element that I saw was math anxiety. Math has always been an area of anxiety for a lot of students and now adults. Just the pressure of math, and I'll dig into this a little bit deeper as we go on. Social conditions are also an element of social emotional learning and math education. Self-determination theory shows us that students who really are motivated and they feel like they can do it, they lean in, and students who really feel like they can't, that's also a self-fulfilling prophecy that happens to them. So the problem in my study is that teachers are encountering difficulties in effectively managing the classroom. Negative behaviors are increasing, and teachers do not feel like they are equipped to help. The purpose of my study was to really understand where teachers are coming from and how to support teachers, and looked at their lived experiences of math education within the classroom. I was looking at Western and Midwestern schools within urban and suburban areas. My literature review, as I was digging in, touched on 3 elements. One was math anxiety. Math anxiety comes a lot from, based on my studies, from parents and then also teachers. The way that teachers have anxiety about math, and that lends itself to students also being a little apprehensive. There's biases and disparities when I was checking for math. Some were covert, some were overt, some are gender-based, some are race-based. This makes things a lot more difficult for students. Educational disparities are largely due to poverty as well, poverty and trauma. Social emotional learning and professional development is something that we're trying to find out more about and see if there's more there to support our students. There seems to be a lack. Social emotional training for teachers is really helpful in enriching students' experiences in math and leaning into their problem-solving skills with math. And as I did my literature review, I noticed some gaps. Some of the gaps that I noticed was there was a lack of research between the Association of Social Emotional Learning and also math achievement. There was a lot to say about SEL and ELA, English Language Arts, or social studies, but not as much for math. There's a lack of empirical evidence to understand the classroom levels of supports that are needed. So if we are having social emotional learning, how are we gauging that? Where is the data? How are we tracking? How are we helping to support? And the third element was the lack of research on social emotional learning policies. We don't have a lot of policies guiding social emotional learning. And so what can we do to make that better? And what are the practical applications that we can really use to help students and teachers alike? So here are some of my research questions. I'm not going to read them all because I'll go into each piece by piece, but the central question was really, what are the lived experiences of elementary and middle school teachers with social emotional learning and math achievement? What is their experience? My research design was a qualitative data analysis based on transcendental phenomenological study, and this is based on Mustakas. My research site was Michigan, Arizona, and Colorado. My sample size was about 17 participants. One was male, the rest were female, and they were novice teachers with less than 3 years of experience, and experienced teachers from 3 years up to 25 years of experience. The way I triangulated my data was I looked at interviews, I looked at focus groups, and then I also had a written prompt at the end. Once I had my focus group, I really wanted to understand that what was your impression by yourself? When you were with a group of people, how did that add to your thinking? And then when you did your written prompt, you had time to reflect on all of that and give me your opinion and give me how you view SEL and math and your experience with teaching. I had 3 major themes. One was relationship building was crucial. The second was student engagement and behavior, and the third was SEL program stewardship. So I used Atlas TI to code my data and look over my research. And with my major themes, I had many sub-themes, and then I had the coding that went along with it. So I want to break that down for you a little bit based on my research questions. My first central question was, what are the lived experiences of elementary and middle school math teachers about social emotional learning and achieving and increasing math achievement? Overwhelmingly, all the participants that I had felt that there was not enough training, not enough practical application. They felt like they needed more support, and the support was not there. I had many teachers that shared their experience. Something that resonated with me and that I saw with many teachers was the promise of this is to come. We will have it next week, we will have it next year, we will have it next month. One teacher waited 3 years and there was still nothing practical. There was plenty of information about trauma and what trauma looks like, and there wasn't enough application about how to handle that trauma. Okay, I know what it looks like, now what do I do? Help me. Also, my real results showed that relationship building with teachers in the classroom is crucial. The impact of a teacher can change the trajectory of a student. It's happened time and time again. But if we don't have the resources to help that teacher, how can we help them change that trajectory? Teacher ownership is crucial, and that varies from teacher to teacher. So what are the elements of teacher ownership that we can help them have so they take ownership of that classroom and they're not waiting to be rescued from someone else? They also want that. My second sub-question was, how do math teachers view changes in student behavior after they integrate SEL into math? The overall response was, between about 15 participants out of the 17, there was not a lot of SEL integration. There is nothing there. Some have it in math curriculum, but still it's lacking practical purposes. There was one quote by Charlotte. She said, if you know a teacher and you know how much SEL was integrated, you have a better idea of understanding what impact it had in your math. So if you have no idea how it's integrated, how can you track that? How can you see if the data is working or if these elements are working to help a student? My second theme that came out was relationship building. It all came back to relationship building. What was teacher impact and what was teacher ownership over these elements? Student engagement and behavior was also crucial. Are students engaged? Are you able to pull them in? Are they making a connection with you? And are they making a connection to the math curriculum and the math rigor? If you have lost students because emotionally they're not there and you don't know how to engage students, then you won't be able to get any growth. My second sub-question was, how do math teachers perceive their SEL training has influenced their teaching practices? Again, there's lacking in training. There's plenty of trauma. There's not enough about what do I do if a student throws a chair? What do I do if a student steals manipulatives from someone else in math? What if a student sits down to do math and they just start crying? What do I do?
Sağ ol Cemal, bir tanesin. Sen olursan ne yapacaktık biz? Nasıl
One moment, please. Some of the quotes that came through were that when students have left and gone to admin and they come back, so sometimes students have an episode where they are angry, where they are upset, and they call admin, the teacher calls admin, please help me, I don't know what to do. The admin will come and take the student, give them some juice, give them some cookies, bring them back in 15 minutes, and now that student has learned, if I just do that again tomorrow, I can get more juice. But where was the solution? How did we help them manage their emotions? How did we help them regulate their emotions? We did not. And this comes back to the SEL program stewardship. Who is taking ownership over this program of social emotional learning? It has to come from leadership. If leadership takes an interest and shows that it's important, then teachers will know, oh, they care about that piece. I better care too. And then it just flows downwards. My third question was, how do math teachers perceive their personal experience with SEL during their schooling and how it's shaped their approach to math? Two things that I found super interesting was teachers who are veteran teachers, maybe 25 years in, maybe 7 years in, maybe 10 years in. They're like, we didn't have social emotional learning when we were growing up. This was not a thing. You went to school, you learned your subject, and you scooted out. The new teachers coming in are finding, oh, we're trained on it. They tell us that if this happens, you do this. But it doesn't account for all the trauma. And it doesn't account to what to do when you have that trauma. So even though veteran teachers are not taught it, they didn't see it growing up, they didn't have it in their own schooling, the newer teachers have been taught it a little bit, still there is a lack of support. And there's a lack of what do we do? Here are a couple of quotes from the teachers. Emma shared that how she didn't learn about SEN in school, but now it's a must. There's another teacher that really caught my eye, and she goes, you know, a lot of times we think kids come to school and they come here to learn math, they come here to learn science. She goes, most of my students, they come here to learn love. What does love look like? Based on my results, relationship building, teacher impact, teacher ownership. How are teachers taking ownership over their classroom, and how are we helping them take ownership over their classroom? I had a couple outliers in my data. Out of the 17 participants, one participant said, I think it's related to red dye. It's in their food. Their food is making them act negative, and these are where the negative behaviors are coming from. Out of the 17 participants, I had one participant who said, I got into teaching because I like to tell people what to do, and I'm strong in math. Whereas 16 said, I want them to grow. I want them to do well. I want them to be successful. So it's not about me and what I'm doing, only as far as is what I'm doing, supporting them and what they're doing. But I didn't have that one outlier. The third outlier, which I found interesting, is math does not increase emotional dysregulation. So what she meant was, where a lot of students have that anxiety, have that upset, math is coming, I know it's coming in 10 minutes, I'm gonna throw my tantrum now, so I'm out of it before we get into it. She felt that there are some students who sometimes live in chaos, and when it comes to math, there's less chaos. There's one question, there's one answer, there may be 20 different ways to get to it, or 4 different ways, but I know at the end, this is my answer, and that brings me peace. I know how to get through that chaos of learning math, and that was just one teacher. These are my implications of my study. For policy, determine which math curriculum aligns with SEL competencies, so the competencies of self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship building, responsible decision-making. How are we aligning that with math? There's definitely a way. And then in practice, how are we making connections with students? How are we having, as adults in the classroom, more self-control in the student in the classroom so we can guide them? This requires a higher level of emotional intelligence from the teacher. And within the study, I have noticed that the teachers with higher emotional intelligence do what they need to do in order to help their classroom, and they are more successful. So they're like, I'm not waiting for your tool that's not here or not coming. I'm going to do it myself. Here's some of the practical and empirical significances. I know that we're on a time crunch, but I want to just, yeah, can I just wrap it up real fast?
Yeah.
Here are my implications for future research. Research on effective training of SEL and practical applications in the future would be wonderful. If SEL is already embedded, how are we tracking that to see, is the SEL making a difference in math achievement, or is it something else? Looking at emotionally aware math AI and tutoring programs, how would an AI help when a student is frustrated and know when to pivot or when to provide support? And the last study, which would be wonderful, is students with ADHD who have math anxiety. How do we support them? I thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me.